29th day of October 2018, allegedly, according to that thing we call a calendar. This, indeed, is the Ocelli Effect, broadcast live from the facilities of Ocelli.com, but also heard on a variety of other networks. Now, this is a moon day, a Monday, when we're doing this live. There have been a couple of difficulties, just so you know, with the podcast feed, and there may be problems with getting prior episodes. Right now it is being rectified, but it takes time because I'm a one-man gang over here at Ocelli.com, so I gotta fix these things myself. Anyway, in the meantime, if you're having trouble getting any of the new episodes and you're wondering why, go to Mixcloud. I'm double posting them over there just to make sure that they're available for everybody. And tonight, because it is Monday and we are continuing the series on religion with Jordan Maxwell, guess what? This will end up on YouTube right away and everything else, and should be part of a brand new fresh feed, which should work flawlessly. Okay, so all of that out of the way, it is Monday, and yes, indeed, I already spoiled it and told you that Jordan Maxwell is with me tonight. We are continuing the series on religion, and before we get started, which I'm pretty sure Jordan is raring and ready to go as per usual, but before we get started, I want to address a little bit of feedback I got from a couple of you guys. There was this instance where the British Zionist organization was being discussed, which was the precursor to many organizations that ended up existing here in America, that do exist now, have multiplied actually exponentially to a degree I was not even aware of. Pre and post 1975, pre and post various laws which would have caused them to be registered as foreign agents of influence and all kinds of other things. I wound up delving into it because Jordan had stated that somewhere around the 1830s an organization had been founded. I went to the organization's website and found that they stated they had been created in the early 1900s. Okay. So, first of all, I got a little bit of criticism, like, why are you trying to correct Jordan Maxwell? Okay, I wasn't. I was simply pointing out what I found, and sometimes I will do a quick search during the show, especially when it's a topic that I am learning about. I want to take a look and give you guys a point of reference so you can look at it. So I do that. But when I did, I wasn't trying to contradict Jordan, first of all. I was simply pointing out what I found. But second, you know what? Nobody is perfect at any of this. Jordan and I have even discussed off the air an instance where he might actually defer to somebody like me, like in the case of the JFK assassination, because I spent a lot of years dedicated to that sort of research. What has Jordan done? He's learned from a lot of interesting people who have dedicated themselves to very specific areas. Now, that's not to say that I was correct here. I wasn't. Jordan actually was. And here's the trick. Ready? The organization was founded in the 1830s, but never officially registered or incorporated or anything else until the 1900s. So therefore, Jordan is correct as to when it was founded. And I was not inaccurate in pointing out that the website stated this, because it does. And so there you go. You actually have two sides of the correct coin coming at you. And this is how we learn. And in fact, if I found something that contradicted Jordan's work or words in some way, and I said, Jordan, that's entirely inaccurate, I'm willing to bet this. He would go and look it up and see, just maybe, he had learned something new from somebody else, because, you know what? Again, studying voluminous amounts of things, especially on a giant topic like religion, you're going to discover new stuff every single day if you look at it for the rest of your life, because it is such an immense topic. So, all of that having been said, and the correction there is that I wasn't correcting Jordan. I was adding to the conversation, and that's what I'm here to do. There you go. Now, enough out of me. Okay, because I want to get right into it. Jordan, you've heard everything I've just laid out here, and
yes, I did.
And go ahead and comment, say what you'd like about it.
Well, I always have said, I try and say every time I'm on the air, I try and say that I am just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge. I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. Why? Because I'm smart enough over the years to know how much I don't know. And I've learned a long time ago, it's better to be humble and admit that you don't know everything going out the gate, so that any detractors who want to make a fool out of me by showing that I made a mistake are going to be very difficult to do, because I'm telling you up front, I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. I've just been in the company of fascinating and important people all my life, and I have learned many things from them. And they got me started onto researching certain subjects I didn't even know existed. And so I totally am aware of how much I don't know, and I make mistakes like anybody else. But that doesn't mean that you get rid of 99% of what somebody's done because they make a small mistake somewhere. So I've made errors, and I will continue to make errors. Why? Because there's so much in history books that is incorrect. So many things that we believe to be true aren't true. Then when you really do research, you begin to find out how much you don't know and how much you didn't know. And there's so many subjects out there that are far, far bigger than we think they are. And a lot more to them than what we've been told.
Well,
and so
right.
when you get into theology, when you get into theology and religion, that's very difficult, boys, filled with minefields everywhere.
Well, right, like digging into this, and this is where this whole conversation and this correction from the listeners led me, Jordan, was to start to study the actual formation of the State of Israel, the fact that there was, and stuff I'd never seen before because I wasn't looking for it, regarding the Zionist Council that came up with the concept of, and the fact is that they chose various other lands. They were looking at possibly even settling in Alaska and Madagascar, simply to create a Jewish homeland. This is their words, right?
Their words were the first place they picked, the first place the Zionists picked to have their homeland was in Uganda, Africa.
Right.
Uganda, Africa was the first place the Zionists picked. And they went in, they didn't say to the Ugandan government, this land is ours. God gave us this land and it's ours. They just said, we'd like to have a place to live. Would you give us part of Uganda so we'll call it Israel? And the Ugandan government thought about it, and they said, no, we've decided no, it's not going to work out. Go someplace else. So, that was the very first place. Then they even picked a part of Texas. The last part of Texas, that was the last one, the last places they picked before they went into Palestine. They picked a place, an area in Texas, and the Texas government said, no, we're not interested in having another state, another country within our country. We're not interested in that. Right. The way we're set up as a republic, and we have 48 states here. We don't need to have another country move in. It's not going to work. So, they have many different places. They kept trying to set up a homeland here, there, and everywhere. And then they finally figured it out. They went to England. They were in England, and in America the Zionists were. And they talked with the Lord Rothschild, and Lord Rothschild said yes. And so he was the Lord. They went to the Lord, and the Lord said, yes, I will give you a place to live. And so the Lord Rothschild said to go to the one place in the world that is the most docile country in the world. Go to Palestine. Those people are just farmers. Go in there and just rape them. Just go in and take everything, and tell them God sent you. That nobody's going to argue with that. If the Lord sent you, then that's that. So just go in there and take over the country. Pile in with tanks and guns and machine guns, and pile over into their country and tell them the Lord sent you.
Now for historical context here, Jordan, and you know, this is again brand new knowledge to me. It's probably old hat to you, but the idea here though was that the Palestinians had been subjugated by the British, the Egyptians, various other peoples had basically ruled over them, and that was just the way of things. They were constantly in this sort of position. Now, simultaneously, what was developed among these councils and these groups that sought to erect this land, what I saw was this concept of ascension. They used a Hebrew word for ascension, essentially, to describe what it was to go back to the homeland, and then they had identified that this was the homeland. Then what ensued after that is an attempt to purchase, an attempt to propagandize, and just a simple flooding in of these individuals like you're describing. But all of this was done with all backed very well by propaganda, by programs to collect money in order to literally purchase the land out from under the Palestinians, etc., and also with the idea that they could be easily subjugated as they had been for centuries, it seems like.
That's
again,
right.
Including the Egyptians, the British, various others who were in the region had at one time held it as, you know, part of their holdings, if you will, in a colonial sense. So all of this coming together as sort of a perfect storm, all the way up until post-World War II, when that declaration was made by the United Nations and they decided to split the land and create, you know, a quote two-state solution. All of this is happening simultaneous with that meeting with Rothschild and with this now newly crafted idea that this was the biblical legendary homeland of the ancient Jewish people. Is that all correct, what I just said?
Pretty much so, yes. But the most important factor in this whole story, the most important part of this whole story has been missing since day one, and that is that Israel is a creation of the Masonic order, British Freemasonry. The Masonic order created Israel, period, and created it for a political reason, so that eventually there will come a day when, if the Masonic order continues to publicize the idea that the Lord is with the Jewish people, the Jews are the God's chosen people, that's all Masonic folklore, and none of it is based on factual truth, none of it. And today, as I told you before, today in Israel there are many professors and teachers, archaeologists, paleontologists, scientists, who are writing books saying that there was, in point of fact, no ancient Israel ever existed. It's a story that has no basis in fact whatsoever. There was no ancient Israel ever. It never existed. There was no King Solomon and King David and the kings and queens and all of these wonderful names of the great prophets and all these people that we see in the Old Testament and the New Testament. None of it is history. It's all made up by secret societies and fraternal orders in Europe, which seek to establish some sort of a world government based on the idea that it is God's will, and we wouldn't want to fight against the Lord. So we don't want to fight against God and His divine will. So therefore, we all need to shut up and just accept what the British Freemasonry has given us. They have given us what we call Israel, Isis, Ra, and El, Israel, the three names of the sun god in the ancient Middle East. So you need to keep in mind, Israel is a product of Freemasonry, period. It is a Masonic creation, period. And this whole idea of a reestablishment of the Temple of Solomon. Right now we're hearing a lot of information about they're going to reestablish the Temple of Solomon, but nobody is telling you who is going to reestablish. Who? Where is the money coming from? Who's going to back it up and who's going to make it happen? All we're told, all we're given to understand is that somehow or another somebody is going to reestablish ancient Israel and reestablish the Temple of Solomon. And Solomon's temple is going to be reestablished. And then you think, by who? Who's got the money? Who's going to do that politically? Who? Then you find out the whole of the entire operation for the reestablishment of the Temple of Solomon is a Masonic order headed by the Rothschild money and the British Masonic fraternities. And it's an incredible story that's connected to 9/11. It's connected to World War coming on the earth. It's connected to all kinds of nefarious stuff going on in the world today that America is involved in, that Europe is involved in, and have no idea in the world that it's a Masonic movement.
Okay, Jordan,
period.
A live question has come in, and it occurred to me at about the same time that Joel is asking this question. So from Joel, actually I'll combine both of our thoughts here because I know what he's going after, and I want to put this to you at exactly this time. Let us assume, for the sake of argument, just for a moment, Jordan, I realize that this is wrong, what I'm about to say, but let's assume for a moment that the idea, the story, that there is a land which has been given to a certain people by God. Let's just assume that story is true for a moment. We have a serious problem here because you need to identify who those people are. Now, there have been interesting studies by people who are not necessarily, involved politically with this, regarding exactly who genetically people that mostly identify themselves as Jewish are. And the interesting thing is that Joel must have read some of the same stuff I did, because here we go. You find that you're talking about people that are European, people that are not remotely Semitic in a sense, Semitic peoples and all that kind of stuff. You find that genetically there is hardly even a marker for them to have existed in the Middle East. And Joel makes the point here that kind of a funny point, but true. This to me personally, but I'll just read it to you anyway, Jordan. Basically, because Chuck is Sicilian. I'm half Sicilian, by the way, Jordan. Because Chuck is Sicilian, that means that essentially he has more Middle Eastern blood in his bloodline, likely, than the average person who identifies themselves as a Jew. Now, I happen to know about the genetic makeup of Sicilians, and Joel's correct, as far as I can tell. Okay?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You'd have to identify this chosen people. And this chosen people would have obviously come from the Middle East at some point, right, Jordan? I mean, if this indeed is the land from whence they came, right?
You would think so. That's exactly right.
So there's an interesting problem here. If they don't have the bloodline to show that is the you see where I'm going with this, right?
Of course.
So could you speak to this part of it, because Joel has kind of an interesting take on this, and it fits right along with a lot of what I was reading. The Sicilian comment I find funny, but Sicilians are literally made up of just about anything on the planet, one way or another. Let's be honest. So you have Middle Eastern blood, you have African blood, you have European blood of all sorts in the Sicilian makeup, let's say. So I understand that part of this, but what's interesting is that most people who identify themselves as Jews are not even genetically linked to the Middle East, one. Two, one other thing that I find interesting, and I also share this experience with Joel, is that most people that I find identifying themselves as Jews in America and in Canada and in other Western countries are not even religious.
No, not at all.
Okay, so go ahead. I just throw it back to you with those interesting thoughts, because I think it fits right in with what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, there is a hidden connection, very dark and very deeply hidden connection between what we call the Jewish people today and the Germanic people, the Germans. They are both connected in some occult or hidden way that is really very deep and very dark and is very interesting. So what we call the Jewish is actually Germanic or German. The Germans are connected to the Jewish ancestry, and there's a very big story here that has never been told to the people of this world by the people who dreamt all of this stuff up. It was dreamt up, I believe, during the earliest times after the change of the century, when 2000, in the year, we're saying that today is 2018. That's 2018 years into the age, the new age that we're living in today. It's been around since 2018. Well, I am totally convinced that the history of the religions of this world, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are so confused as to when they actually began, as opposed to when we're being told that they actually began. I am of the opinion that Christianity probably preceded Judaism. Christianity was here before Judaism because Judaism as an ancient history never existed. That's what I'm telling you. There are many authors and writers and scientists and philosophers in Israel that are writing books and giving lectures. You can go on the web and go to YouTube and just listen to the lectures of doctors and professors in Israel that are showing you step by step there was, in point of fact, no ancient Israel ever existed in this world, period. Therefore, since there was no ancient Israel, it's very difficult to go into somebody else's country and say, God gave us this land is mine, the Lord gave it to us, so you people have to get out, leave and get out. We need your home, we need your food, so we got to have a place to live, and the Lord gave us this home. In point of fact, there was no ancient ancestry, period. Israel never existed in history, period. End of sentence. So therefore, when you hear that the Jews went into Israel, into Palestine, and said, God gave us this land, well, why didn't they go there first? And if God gave them the land, why did they go to 8 different other countries trying to set up the state of Israel? Why didn't they go there first? If they're so incredibly sure that their history is correct and there was an ancient Israel and King Solomon and King David and all the ancient prophets, they all were actual historical people, and that God gave them the land and called it Palestine. Why did they go to Africa first? Why did they go to Russia next? Why did they go to Europe next? Why did they go to Germany? Why did they go to Texas? If they were so sure that God gave them the land in Palestine, why didn't they go there first? Well, now we're finding out why the Islamic people, we're now finding out why Israel or the Zionists did not go to Israel first. They went all the rest of the world trying to set up a homeland, and finally they decided, look, it's best just to go into the Middle East, because most people in the Western world don't know beans about the Middle East. We'll just go in and take the damn property, period. We'll just move in and take it. And then we will tell the world, the Lord gave us this property and it's ours. But the professors and the historians in Israel today are writing books and proving conclusively there was no ancient Israel. It was all dreamt up, most likely by the Knights Templars, most likely by the Templar Knights, which are made famous by the Indiana Jones, Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Indiana Jones movies were playing on that subject of the Knights Templar Masonic Order and how they had a design to take over the entire world and give us what we call international banking and the world government, a new world order, financially backing Adolf Hitler. As I said, there's a connection between the Germans and the Jewish people. And so when you begin seeing that the God of the ancient, the God of what we call the ancient Hebrews, what we've been told was actually the planet Saturn, and today the sun is part of the Jewish religion, well, so is the sun is part of the German religion. Well, Germany is referred to today as the Holy Roman Empire, the center for the heart of the Holy Roman Empire. We are looking at a very dark, hidden story that the Knights Templars have formulated for us to believe and sold to us around the world, so that today, all over Christendom, all over the Christian Western world, we all believe that there was an ancient country called Israel, and the Lord himself was the God of over Israel. And now we're beginning to see academically it's all breaking down, and in point of fact, there was no ancient Israel, period. It's a story. The greatest story ever told. It's the greatest story ever told. That's why it's just a story. It has no basis in political or actual historical fact whatsoever. There was no ancient Israel. So why would the Zionists go in and say to Israel and say to the Palestinians, God gave us this land, when they know the whole story was dreamt up by a Masonic order out of London, out of Europe. It's a Masonic story that's been sold to the world, and since the guys who run the printing presses and who own the media, they've been lying to us for hundreds of years. They've been lying to us in our schools, in our universities. They have a story, and it's the greatest story ever told. It's just a story. And when you find out none of it is true, it's not based on fact, and we've got a serious problem today. Mm-hmm. And we've all been bought into the same old story. So I'm just saying that you need to wake up and find out that if Israel actually existed as an ancient culture, which it did not, but if it did, why would they go to Africa, to Uganda first to set up the state of Israel? Mm. Why? Why did they then go to Russia? And after Russia turned them down, why did they go to Australia? And they turned them down. Why did they go to one country after another? They kept going to about 8 different countries. All you got to do is just go follow the history of Zionism, all the different countries they went to trying to set up the state of Israel, until it finally dawned on them. Somebody told them, it was probably Rothschilds, who said, go into Palestine and take it over. We'll financially back you. We'll back you with a military machine. And it was the Rothschilds who came up with the idea for the United Nations, a one world government of which Adolf Hitler dreamed he was going to be able to be the Führer of the new world order, when in point of fact, Germany, under the Führer, wanted to set up a new world order called Nazism. And when you find out that the high priest in Israel, who officiates over the high court in Israel, is called a Nazi, N-A-S-I. Go look it up in the dictionary. Look up the word N-A-S-I, Nazi. A Nazi is a high official in the high courts of Israel. Supposedly an ancient Israel court had the high priest as a high official in the Israeli court, and today the Israeli court, the chief justice of the Israeli court today, is referred to as a Nazi, N-A-S-I, which actually means, the word Nazi means a president. And this is why we have a president in the United States. We have a president of corporations. It goes back to the word Nazi, N-A-S-I. The dictionaries will tell you there's a better spelling of N-A-S-I. It's N-A-Z-I. I don't write the dictionaries. I'm just reading them. Go back and see the difference and the connections, I should say, between N-A-S-I and N-A-Z-I. And then you'll find that for the beginning, now you're just now beginning to find a real dark connection between what you call Judaism today and Israel today. and the Nazi Party. There is a very definite connection between, and if you go back to the foundation of what we call Israel, goes back to sun worship in the ancient Israel. In the ancient days of those ancient times, there were people who were worshiping the sun. They're still today worshiping the sun. Right. The name of the God of Israel is so holy. We are told today that the name of God is so holy that you cannot use that name in public. You cannot use that name. Right. It's too holy. But there is a substitute name that you can use if you want to talk about the God of the Hebrews. There's a substitute name, and that is Tetragrammaton. The Jews will know what I'm talking about. Tetragrammaton is the name of God. It's a substitute name. That's not the real God's name. That's a substitute name that you can use. And so the word is Tetragrammaton. Tetra, which is 4, the letter 4. Then gramma, which is a letter like A, B, C, and D. Those letters are called gramma. And so Tetragrammaton is 4 letters, tetragramma, aton, A-T-O-N, aton. Aton, go look it up in the dictionary. Aton was the sun god of Egypt. The most important sun god of all of Egypt was called the Aton. This is why they always on any synagogue, you will see on the altar in a synagogue, you will always see the name of the god that's called the Tetragramma Aton. It's the 4 letters of the god of the sun in Egypt, the Aton, and it's always inside of a sunburst. Right. This is why you see the sunburst used by the Nazis, which was a swastika in a circle. The swastika, we know, goes back to the symbol for the ancient sun god of Egypt. It's a swastika is a sun symbol. The Tetragramma Aton. The Aton was the sun god, and his symbol today is a swastika and the sunrise. And so we have the Communist Party in Soviet Union used the sun god, the Aton, as their symbol for the Soviet communism was represented by the sun god Aton. And Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany was symbolized by the Aton, the swastika. And this is why you find swastikas on the floors of Jewish synagogues in Israel today. Today in Israel, if you go to Israel, visit some of the old synagogues, and you will see in the middle of the floor on the synagogues in Israel, you will see swastikas. Why swastikas on a Jewish synagogue floor? Because it represents the Aton, the Tetragramma Aton, the symbol for the sun god of ancient Egypt.
Right.
So
now,
this whole entire story is crazy. It's all incredibly hidden from the human, hidden from all of us. We don't know. We don't read. We don't know.
Exactly. Now, as long as questions keep coming in, I will interject them into this conversation. You guys can do that in the live chat room or on my Skype list. That's fine. We do have a live chat at Ocelli.com. Another one came in as you were speaking. So, if this is all about fielding questions today, that's just fine with me. I know that you're more than happy to do so, Jordan, right?
Yeah, of course. I don't mind.
So here is the question based on when you were talking about the word Nazi and then Nazi, N-A-S-I and N-A-Z-I. They asked, first of all, well, it's actually 2 questions. All right. First question is, this sounds very familiar. Does this have anything to do with the term Ashkenazi, which I'm not sure if you spelled that right, but then again, I don't know anybody who spells that correctly. I'd have to look that up. But I know what you're saying. Ashkenazi, and Nazi, the whole thing. It does sound extremely familiar. Second question is, what do you think of the work of Arthur, I guess that you pronounce that Koestler, who...
Arthur Koestler, the 13th tribe. Yeah, he wrote about the 13th tribe. That's basically what I'm talking about. Arthur Koestler was persecuted and probably died because he wrote that book. I've seen articles written talking about how the fact that Otto Kessler, when he wrote his book, The 13th Tribe, ended up assassinated. Somebody killed him for writing that book. I don't recall this whole story, but I seem to remember that Otto Kessler was in fact killed because of writing that book, when he talked about the whole history of Judaism is not what you think it is. That was his whole thesis of the book. The whole idea of the book was called the 13th Tribe, meaning that there were 12 tribes, we're told, the 12 tribes of Israel. There was no 12 tribes of Israel. They never existed. So therefore, when you hear people talking about the 12 tribes of Israel, know that what they're talking about is Knights Templar Masonic astrology, dealing with the zodiac. The zodiac is the basis for the 12 signs of the zodiac, became the 12 brothers of Joseph, the 12 apostles, the 12 signs of Israel, the 12 great prophets. Everything in the Bible, Old Testament, about Israel is in 12s. Why? Because Israel is based, the whole story of Israel is based on astrology, the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's why Jesus, another reason why Jesus is said to have been born of a virgin, because one of the 12 signs of the zodiac is Virgo, the virgin. That is where we get the idea that Jesus was born of a virgin. Right. Nobody is born of a virgin. We're talking about astrology, astrological story that the Knights Templar Masonic Lodge has given to the world. They've taken from the ancient world, the ancient astrological stories, and brought them into the Western world and called it Christianity and Judaism. So that Christianity and Judaism is nothing more than a Masonic story that was dreamt up during I think probably the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, 10th century A.D., so that the whole of ancient Israel, history of ancient Israel was dreamt up by a Masonic order and out of Europe under the Vatican to give the Vatican a platform from which to work and say that they were, Christianity was the outgrowth of a religion started by Jesus in Israel. There was no ancient Israel. Therefore, there was no ancient Israel. There was no ancient religion. The whole thing was dreamt up by the same people who dream up the movies for us today and tell us all these wonderful stories of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and the Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Temple of Doom. All these ideas are all coming out of the ideas of people who work in the Western civilization and motion pictures and television and entertainment industry. There is no history to any of it, period. That's why there's a war going on. That's why the war is getting worse every day, because we have based all of our maneuvering and the world politics America has on a story that's not true. We're trying to promote a story and make it stick and make it work when there's no basis for truth in it whatsoever. There was, in fact, no ancient Israel ever existed, period. It was dreamt up in the AD, not BC. It's not a BC religion. Incredible story, and it's all there, but it's about time somebody stands up and says something publicly so people can start looking at the subject and researching it themselves. Look at the connection between the dreamt-up name of God, the tetragramma Aton, and the word Aton, A-T-O-N, you will find is the name for the God of Israel, the Aton, which is a sun god. And this is why Jesus was referred to as God's Son, the light of the world. Of course, the sun is the light of the world. The whole of Christianity and Judaism is a made-up story by the Masonic orders, I believe, out of Europe. The European Masonic orders, period. And it's an incredible story of betrayal, and we based our whole life on it. We based our life on the church, hoping that the church was representing God, and then you find out the whole idea of God goes back to sun worship. It goes back to moon worship. It goes back to astrology. That's why the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 stones and the bracelet of the high priest. Everything is 12. Why? Because of the 12 months of the year. The 12 tribes of Israel. There was no 12 tribes. It's the 12 signs of the zodiac. Wake up and get a life, and you will find that everything we understand in theology and religion today was given to us by a secret society known as the Freemasons of Europe. The Freemasons of Europe dreamt up all kinds of wonderful stories for us to believe. And we buy into it because we don't know any better. We don't do any research. We don't read, we don't study anything. We don't read anything. We don't know anything. But the whole story of ancient Israel never existed. That's my feeling. That's based on what I have been told and talked to so many experts and authors and writers and researchers around the world. And now, as I said, it's beginning to come out now in the state of Israel that there never was an ancient Israel. The whole entire Old Testament was dreamt up by a secret society. And this is why today I have been told by so many Christians, isn't it magnificent the way the Old Testament had all of the wonderful prophecies of things to come, the Messiah who was to come, and all the great stories in the Old Testament, and they were all fulfilled in Jesus. All the ancient scriptures were fulfilled in Jesus, in the New Testament. And I say, I don't think it's that wonderful. I think the same people who wrote the Old Testament actually eventually wrote the New Testament as a fulfillment. The same people wrote both books.
Well, right. Now here's an interesting point, too, because a lot of people that tell me that they place their whole faith into Christianity will tell me that all prophecies that were, given in the Old Testament were fulfilled in the New Testament, and it's absolute proof that it is the reality. But what you're saying, essentially, and let's give it a metaphor here. It's almost like writing a movie and then writing the prequel to that movie afterwards. So you know where it's going. Like when they did the, I know the Star Wars movies.
Well, yeah, it's a Star Wars movie. They already knew about 15 different Star Wars stories that have to be told, and they got to start somewhere.
Right. Now
they start somewhere and then work backwards, right, and then work frontwards again.
Well, see, but they started with episode 4, they did 5, 6, right? So then when they went and did episode 1 again, they knew how they were going to end up around episode 3. And it was all going to link together, but those movies came out way after. Really, that's the way to look at this here, is that, well, gee, if you imagine, or you understand, I should say, that the New Testament is really the first thing written, then it's kind of easy to create the Old Testament to make the New Testament make sense, right?
Of course.
So,
of course.
And now if you can pass that off as the pre-existing documentation, then you've got a winner there, See, that's the interesting thing here, too, is that, again, it always astounds me that from the pulpits in Christian churches today, as you and I are speaking, I'm sure there's people at church, okay, in America.
Right. Oh, there's no doubt.
And they're hearing that to say anything about Israel in any way, shape, or form is literally speaking out against God. You are literally disobedient to God because of this. And that is ingrained in the well-meaning Christian mindset. Again, I say, I have a hard time with this because it's just like this insistence that this is the reality. And again, I mean, if you're looking for your homeland in Uganda, okay, God didn't have a map. He couldn't show you where it was. You know what I mean? He created the heavens and the earth, or they created the heavens and the earth if you read your book properly. But anyway, he created the heavens and the earth, but he couldn't give you directions, is what you're telling me. Because Alaska, Texas, Russia, Uganda, this does not sound like Palestine until they finally get to Palestine. And then it was literally the United Nations, which wound up codifying the split of the land legally, basically, and the United States ever after turning a blind eye to a lot of things when it comes to political intrigue. But It's fascinating. It's all based on the foundation, the groundwork, the literal, bedrock that this is all built on is the allegedly ancient story. I mean, isn't that true? Like everything we see right now, it's all based on the allegedly, this is the oldest, story there is. This is the oldest truth.
That is my point. That the reason why the Knights Templars, the Masonic Lodge of Europe, the British Grand Lodge, history of the British Grand Lodge goes back to the Masons of Europe coming up with this story about ancient Israel and giving us the Bible. The Bible actually is a copyrighted book. It's interesting to find out who owns the copyright on the Bible. Who owns the copyright? Who wrote this Bible? And where did it come from? And who put up the money to make it the most important book ever published on the earth, that everybody has a copy of it in their language? Why is it so important? It has to do with the promotion of an ancient secret society and their particular agenda that they have for the world. They were the people behind Adolf Hitler, who were promoting the New World Order. And then comes in America, the Bushes with their New World Order. And the Vatican talking about the coming of a new earth, a new world. And the whole New World Order is an old ancient philosophy going back into the ancient world. And it has nothing to do with any people called Israel. The whole area we call today Israel is actually Canaan. And you will find that the Canaanites had a particular language called Phoenician. And the word Phoenician, going back to the ancient Phoenician peoples of the Middle East, give us today the Phoenician language is referred to as Hebrew. In fact, there is no Hebrew language. There is a Hebrew people that speak a language that we call them Hebrews, and therefore we say that they're speaking Hebrew. It's not Hebrew. It's a Phoenician Canaanite language. And we get the word Phoenician gives us our word phony. It comes from Phoenician. Phony and the phonics and words like that comes from Phoenician. So go back and look at the Phoenician people, and you will see that what we call Phoenicia is today referred to as Israel. Israel is the ancient land of Canaan in the Bible. You talk about all the horrible things that were going on in the land of Canaan. And that God cursed the land of Canaan and said it was a terrible place and to have nothing to do with it. That's in the Bible, the Old Testament. Well, Canaan today is called Israel. Israel is the land of Canaan today. And this is why this is when you get into the words and terms of where these words come from, and the incredible story about the Canaanite religion. The priest of Canaan, they would offer up sacrifices. Usually it was children. They would burn as a sacrifice. They would kill the children and burn their bodies on an altar. And then, according to the Canaanite religion, they said they were worshiping the sun. And the Canaanites called the sun Baal, B-A-A-L, Baal. Baal worship was the worship of the sun in the land of Canaan. Go back and look at it. Today, we say that we know that the priests of Canaan who were worshiping Baal, B-A-A-L, Baal as the sun, they were Baal worshippers, and they would offer up human sacrifice. They would kill children and people and then burn their bodies, but they were supposed to eat part of the burned bodies. They were burning the bodies so that God could smell the flesh. He liked smelling burnt flesh. And this is what we're told in the Canaanite religion, that God says, I love the smell of your sacrifices. The sacrifices were human, so when they're burning humans on the altar, God loved the smell of human bodies burning. And so that's where we get this idea that they were Baal worshippers, were eating the bodies of their sacrifices. And so they were from Canaan, and so they were Baal worshippers from Canaan, which gives us our word Canaan-Baal. or cannibal. Cannibal comes from Cana worshippers of worshiping Baal, Cana Baal, cannibals. And this is what we call today Israel. Israel is the land of Cana Baal worship, the sun god. The sun being B-A-A-L, Baal, or swastika, or tetragramma, Aton. All of this goes back to the sun worship, moon worship, Venus worship, the worship of the planet Saturn, the worship of the moon. All of these are ancient pagan religions, and nobody today gives a damn. Nobody seems to care. We just go along to get along, and whatever everybody else is doing, that's what we'll do. Everybody's going to the synagogue. We'll all go to the synagogue too. Nobody seems to know when they get there where the word synagogue comes from. Everybody's going to church. Yeah, we all Christians going to church. You don't know where the word church comes from. You need to go back and get a dictionary and look at the words and what you are supposedly involving yourself in, because you're involving yourself in a dark, ancient secret. And this is why the world is not getting any better, because we are based on lies, deception. There is no such a thing as an ancient Israel. There is no Lord coming back to save us. These are all ancient stories. Jesus himself is referred to in the book of Revelation as Lucifer. You need to go back and do some homework on all the words that you're using in religion. Where did they come from? Who is financing this fiasco we call the world and the world religions? And who set up the World Council of Churches? And where did the Vatican come from? And where did the stories come from? It's an incredible story of betrayal. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to notice that we've all been had and lied to, and that's what's happening to the world today. Now we're having to pay for our lies. We're having to pay with wars and violence and our country being taken over, being led into wars and slavery, stupidity and ignorance. My God, what an incredible story, a betrayal of the human family. Our religions are nothing more than a political philosophies based on some old ancient pagan religions. That's who we are today. That's why America is where it is today, and that's why the end of this country looks like it's in the foreseeable future. Our country is falling apart. Why? Because we are not God's chosen people. There's nothing about us that commemorates our connection to Almighty God. We don't even know anything about God. You don't even know where the word theology comes from or what it means.
I have one other instant question that has come up. It's a little bit longer, but I want to read the whole thing to you. And this is, let's see, this is from James. And the bottom line here, okay, let's see, where is it at? Sorry, 1 second, Jordan. I gotta roll these things around while I'm talking to you, and sometimes I overdo it. And there we go. I've scrolled it back in place. All right, I have what he says. I'll just read it. I have listened to you several times on Chuck's show and also on Rents and other places, and I have noted that many times you mention a sun god, and many times the sun god has different names. Are they all exactly the same God, or is there a big difference? Okay, well, it's kind of a general, wide open question, but I think it's an important one, because there are several times where I know on this show for sure, I haven't listened to you on Rents, but I know on this show you brought up sun worship, and you've described the sun god by many different names. And the moon god has a couple of different names and all that. But, you know, is this just a matter of cross-contamination between cultures? Or is this, this is the rest of the question. Is this a cross-contamination between cultures, or are they actually different deities? Okay.
I would say and answer very quickly that we're told in the Bible that God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. His only begotten Son means there's only one. So anytime you confront sun worship anywhere in the world is talking about that one thing that comes up in the morning for all of us for thousands of years. It's called the sun, S-U-N. And the word S-U-N is often confused with S-O-N. This is why your boy, if you have offspring, you have a male offspring, he's your boy, and he is the light of your life. We say he is your sun. He lights up your life. And he will continue to carry on your name and your life, and your presence on the earth will be continued with him. He will be the one who will continue your name and your presence on the earth when you are gone, is your son. He is the light of your life. This is why Jesus is called God's Son, the light of the world, because the Son is the light of the world. And he is your risen Savior. That's exactly what it does. Every morning on the earth, it rises. About 5:30 in the morning, it rises. So it is your risen Savior. And what do you mean risen Savior? Well, if the sun doesn't rise, we're going to die in about 3 weeks. It's going to get real cold and real chilly, and we're not going to have food to eat. We're not going to be able to live. Our energy will run out somewhere along the line, and you cannot heat the earth by nuclear power. It's not working. It's not going to work. You can't heat the earth. Only the sun gives us the energy to grow plants and grow animals and grow food. So the rising sun is a symbol for our Messiah, for the one who has come back to bring life to us. He's come back to bring life. Why? Because he went south every year and dies in December. And he's down south, and down south it's in the summer, but up here in December and January and February it's freezing cold. So for us in the northern hemisphere, God's Son, the light of the world, has died, and for 3 days he's dead on the sundial. You have is December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. The sun hits the lowest point in the southern sky and does not move northward or southward. It just stays on the same degree for 3 days. So the ancient people said anything that was moving all year long and dies between 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, it doesn't move on the sundial, it must be dead. So God's Son dies for 3 days. Then on the 25th, the sun moves 1 degree northward. Therefore, anything that was dead for 3 days and is now moving is now born again. It's now come back to light. And now, 3 months later, 90 degrees and 90 days later, is now crossing over, coming back to the northern hemisphere, and is crossing over the equator. So the ancient people celebrated the sun coming across the equator, and they called it the Passover. So today the Jews celebrate what we call the Passover. The sun is passing over the northern into the northern hemisphere. It's passing over the equator into the northern hemisphere, bringing our spring. Why? Because it was dead in the winter, but he is springing back to life. So we call it spring. I mean, he was a lion of the tribe of Judah in summer, and then he was falling. He was getting weaker, and he fell. So we call it fall. And then he died in December. Now he's coming back, crossing over the equator. So it's now the spring. And the spring was always associated with the constellation of the zodiac, the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin. So God's Son is born of a virgin. The entire story is an ancient astrology story of how our solar system works. The entire subject of Christianity is based on sun worship, the swastika. This is why Christianity was so big on supporting Christianity, supporting the Nazis. The Vatican supported the Nazi movement in Germany. Hitler made connections with the Vatican and swore to support the Jesuits. The Jesuits were operating behind the scenes in Nazi Germany, and the Vatican was supporting Adolf Hitler. It's an incredible story. of the connections behind the Jewish people, the German people, the actual history of Europe, and the actual history of the world we live in. None of it is true.
And that's really something interesting. Now, we're going to go to a break here, but Jordan Maxwell's with me, and we are continuing the discussion on religion here in this series, this very special series. Fascinating question coming up in the next hour, which is, I don't know, strange. I find this question very strange, but stick around and stay with us, because Jordan Maxwell and myself will be back, and we'll answer any reasonable question that is offered in the chat room or on Skype. Feel free to even email me at info@ocelli.com. I have the email open right now. Anyway, stick around. Like I said, we'll be right back, continuing the discussion on Effect begins now. Jordan Maxwell is our guest this evening, and not really our guest because he's been doing a series with us here at the site now. I do believe we're up to episode 13. I got to take a look at that. I will figure it out when I put this post out. I promise you. But when you guys get it is going to be packed with a whole lot of information. But you know what else is packed with a ton of information? A website called JordanMaxwellShow.com. Now, why do I say you got to go to JordanMaxwellShow.com? And I'm stressing the show. Okay, Jordan Maxwell and show is all together as one word. It's JordanMaxwellShow.com. Why is it that I'm stressing this? Because it's the only site that's actually Jordan Maxwell's website. Okay? That's the first thing. What can you do over there? Well, you could email Jordan. You could make a donation. You could explore some of the things that are there publicly, but also you could join the Research Society and go even deeper into this topic as well as many others, including the monetary system, world government, governments in general, the monetary system, if you will, various aspects of religion. Actually, religion seems to be one category, but it's actually spread across a few others. Go take a look at it for yourself. And there is some videos there that are on demand, which you can purchase very easily and get them for much cheaper than if you were to simply buy a DVD and have it shipped to you, and you get it instantaneously. All that stuff is available at JordanMaxwellShow.com. I'll also give you guys a separate link to go directly to the Research Society website, although there's a button right there on the front page of JordanMaxwellShow.com that you can click and go to the Research Society, but I'm going to give you the direct link along with the podcast tonight and a few other links of reference here from the discussion. A couple of things will come from me, but most importantly, JordanMaxwellShow.com. Go there. Writing to Jordan, you know, it might take him a little bit of time, but he does respond to emails. You got one of those automated response things over there first. So you'll see that, and it'll, you know, say, hey, Jordan received your email, but he'll get back to you. And then generally he's more than happy to write to you, especially if you're making an inquiry, seeking to educate yourself, letting him know what you think of what he's doing. All of that. Also, like I said, donations, the Research Society, the videos are there, and new stuff is being added to the Research Society all the time. There are multiple terabytes of information kind of sitting in the wings, waiting to be added, and there's already a tremendous amount of images, audio, suggested reading, articles, points of reference that you really don't find anywhere else within the Research Society. So, there you go. The unique website for the unique individual Jordan Maxwell at JordanMaxwellShow.com. Okay. So now that I've done that, and I want to make sure that everybody got a hold of that, we're going to continue on, and you can add in your questions by going to the live chat room at Ocelli.com. You could send an email to info@Ocelli.com. You could also, just for the purposes of this show, you could also send me a message on Skype. I accept all of them. So I kind of have a strange question here, Jordan, and, I'm just going to present it to you and then possibly give you my concept of why it makes sense that this is so. But they wanted to know, since the sun is the feature when it comes to the scripture here, and the sun over and over again has been described in seemingly every religion across every culture, because again, like you said, we're always talking about the one thing, the sun, but different cultures have applied different names. mildly different aspects of personality to the said deity that is the sun. It's about sun worship, that's that. But what about that energetic ball that seems to be at the core of the earth, that molten metal that continues to be hot and seems to also be there? It is not mentioned in the scriptures, according to the person who is writing in, and they want to know why that is, or if you have some sort of thoughts about the fact that that was never mentioned, even though it is something that does seem to exist, the core of the earth that is hot and maybe even, produces energy much like the sun does.
Well, I've looked at this subject of the sun and the earth's core. There was a writer, a very fascinating, interesting researcher, an older guy I heard on another radio show a long time ago, and I've been following his work. His name was Ian, I-A-N. Can't remember his last name now that I need it. I can't remember it. But he's written so many books. I think he was from South Africa, and he was writing about the earth and how it was formed, etc. And he said that all of the planets scientifically are provable, that all the planets in our solar system are hollow at the core. They have to be hollow at the core. And maybe a small core. It's not the whole, like that, the inner earth story about the inside of the earth is a whole universe, and we are actually living on the inside of the earth and all of that stuff. But this particular writer, this particular scientist was fascinating to listen to as he explained that his book was a very thick book written about the hollow earth, and that the earth is hollow at the center, just as all the other planets are also, and why they have to be hollow. According to scientific investigation, they have to be hollow. And I can't remember his name. I'm sure it was Ian was his original first name. But he brought out the fact that it has to be hollow because of experiments that have been done with sound waves in the earth, and that, the earth itself is not molten lava at the center at all. That is just a cover story that has no basis in scientific fact at all. And that his book was highly recommended he was talking on one of the big shows I heard, and he was saying that he's gotten so many responses from scientists around the world after reading his book that the earth is actually hollow at the core, and that it has gotten great reviews from all kinds of universities and scientists and researchers on the subject. They all have said that the book was astoundingly brilliantly written, and that it could very well be true because of the scientific stuff he was talking about that proves the earth is hollow at its core. So again, you need to keep in mind something I brought out on a couple of programs before, that there's a big difference between the S-U-N and S-O-N. Look it up if you're interested in English. Look up the word or look up the title, The Lazy O. The word is lazy O. The lazy O is a phenomena which happens in English that only a handful of people at the top of the English-speaking world have studied and understand. That the O, they call it the lazy O, which means that when English was being formulated, it was being put together as a language. There was a problem with the S-O-N and S-U-N. And so the translators were beginning to come across this problem continually on any word that has S-O-N in it. There was the question as should it be S-U-N, and so they eventually decided during the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages, when they were translating the English into a language in Europe, they decided that whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Just put S-O-N or S-U-N. It doesn't matter because it's the same word. It doesn't matter because it's the same identical word that means the same thing when it's translated. So S-O-N and S-U-N was decided that it doesn't matter. Just use either letter, S-U or S-O, doesn't matter. That's what the English people who were writing the King's English and putting it together for us, they said it doesn't matter. It's the same word, S-U-N, S-O-N. It's called the lazy O. And I've had people from England, professors from big universities in England, write me and explain to me and give you the links to go and study the founding of the English language and the and the particular interesting point about the O and the U in the word son. It means the same thing. So when you talk about God's Son, the light of the world, the Son is the light of this world. And then you say Jesus is God's Son, S-U-N. No, it's S. You would say Jesus is God's Son, S-O-N, like his offspring. No, it's S-U-N, not S-O-N. So the bottom line is that Christianity is worshiping the Son. This is why the day for worship of Christianity is referred to as Sunday, S-U-N-D-A-Y, Sunday. So you go to church on Sunday to worship the Son. God's Son, the light of the world. He is our risen Savior. He has 12 helpers. Yeah, the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year. So, there's just so much about our religions of the Western world that we're not aware of. Right. The Jews are not aware of their actual, real, legitimate history. The Christians are not aware of their history, and for sure, the Islamic people are totally unaware of what's going on in Islam. They have no idea where it came from, have no idea who, and some of the most important scholars in Islam today are writing books basically saying that there's a question as to whether Muhammad ever lived. Whether there was a man named Muhammad, it's very, very doubtful that there was a man actually named Muhammad who actually lived. That's probably part of the scheme to promote the religion of Islam, as they dreamt up an idea that a man named Muhammad lived. And this is what some of the best scholars in Islam are writing today. But happily, most people don't care. They don't read. They don't care. They just go along, and I've said so many times before, and I'll say it again. Children do not like to be made fun of in classroom, in a schoolroom setting. If the teacher calls upon you and you haven't done your homework and you don't understand a problem, and the teacher tells you to get up before the class and explain this problem and how to get the correct understanding of the problem. Well, if you haven't studied it and you don't know what they're talking about, and it's not something that is not of interest to you as a kid, but you're going to be standing in front of the class trying to figure out what to say, and you're going to be laughed at and mocked by your fellow students. No child wants to be mocked and laughed at in front of a class. Well, the same thing is true for adults. Adults are nothing more than grown-up children. Adults don't like to be laughed at and mocked in front of an audience that they were wrong and they didn't know something. They don't like that. That's very distasteful to people to be mocked and laughed at. That's why today the people who run our planet, the guys who say they own the world and they run our planet, they know that generally speaking, people will not go against what everybody wants to believe is true. There's only going to be a handful who will stand up for truth. Most people will not stand out there by themselves and say something is a lie and it's not true, because most people want to be loved and thought well of by their friends. And friends are not going to think very well of you if you're going to go against their religious beliefs or against their political beliefs. And so that's why the Illuminati masters who run this world know they don't have to worry about the masses of people. the people will always follow each other. The blind lead the blind, and they all fall in the pit together. So you got blind leaders and blind guides who tell us stories, old wise tale stories, and tell us it's history, and we just go along with it. Why? Because everybody else in town goes along with it. And if you want to buck the crowd, and you want to stand up and say that this is not true, it is not history at all, then you're going to be mocked and laughed at, and people don't want to face their fellow man. I don't care myself. I understand. I've always preferred standing for what is true and admitting it and get it over with. Just admit that something is true and move on with it. And so that's what I do. I don't mind putting myself out there to be ridiculed, because I'm just an ordinary man pursuing extraordinary knowledge. I'm not a world-class expert. I'm just an ordinary person who questions everything. I'm tired of people telling me all kinds of stories that they believe are absolutely true, and then you find out how much you didn't know, and you get yourself in trouble. This is why so many people in America are in trouble with the law, because they don't know what the law really is. They don't know what it actually says.
Well, and let me interrupt you here really quickly, because, you know, the question initially about the earth and what is in it and what is on it and how the sun interacts with it. Let me just make a quick observation here. And Jordan, obviously, if you disagree, I would like to hear from you. But the fact is that science itself, I almost view as a religion too. And I'll tell you why. Their beliefs continue to change, even though there's supposed to be empirical knowledge to prove that scientific fact is fact, right? So when it comes to this concept, like I used to very much scoff at the idea that, you know, any part of the earth was really hollow. You can observe the lava and things like that. We've talked about volcanoes on here. We've talked about volcano worship. We've talked about, that's a whole another area. But, so you know part of the components that make up the planet. But it seems to me as though these things have been adjusted over time. As, you know, new realities are emerging, some things become undeniable, some things become misunderstood, et cetera, et cetera. I even talked to you during the break about what I visually observe about the sun, which people used to tell me I was crazy. But honestly, it seems to be the most sound thing, what I personally observe, which is that the sun doesn't actually produce light, that it literally sends energy. And much like electricity doesn't in and of itself cause light to occur, right? You send electricity through, say, a fluorescent light bulb. I'm not suggesting you use fluorescent light bulbs. I'm saying that electricity transmitted to a fluorescent light bulb causes light to be created. It seems to me as though in this equation, the Earth itself is almost like a fluorescent light bulb. And the fact that lava, which continues to be hot, which continues to be fluid, which continues to move and to every once in a while burst from volcanoes and things like this. The whole science of plate tectonics, in fact, it does appear to be relatively sound. It seems to me like that energy doesn't, just stop at the very surface of the earth and feed the plants and feed the animals and feed everything else. It seems as though it continues on and does other things, okay? Almost as if, say, all those metallic components that are in liquid form were a battery continuously being charged by the sun as it revolves around the planet, which might actually keep it in motion. Now, this is my theory. I'm not a scientist, but scientific theories on exactly this have changed several times over the past couple of 100 years alone.
Continually they're being changed. Right. Yeah, of course. I'm of the opinion that when you see the molten lava coming out of the volcanoes, so it's coming out of the earth. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the molten lava goes all the way down to the center of the earth. It's all the earth itself is nothing but molten lava. No, I don't think that at all. I don't think that is true at all. That when you see a volcano that's close to the surface But that's not what the earth is way down deep inside the earth. It's not all molten lava. We know that there are huge bodies of water in the earth. We know that there's enormous bodies of water, whole oceans of water under the earth, along with the molten lava. And so I don't think that there's molten lava under the earth, all over the earth, all the way down to the core. I don't think that at all. That's ludicrous, is my opinion. So I think that the molten lava that we're seeing coming out of volcanoes are very close to the surface, and that there is something going on just beneath the surface of the earth, that where lava does exist, but it doesn't go all the way down through the earth so that the entire earth is filled with lava. I don't think that's logical at all. It doesn't make sense to me. And besides, I've heard scientists talking about this, and they are saying that the earth is actually hollow at the center. That makes some sense to me.
Well, and here's the thing, though, to say that the lava is not a major component would be wrong too. But how does it stay warm? How does it stay liquid? How does it stay, basically underneath these rock formations, which are at some points, having seams, fault lines, things like this. It's interesting, but again, that knowledge has sort of evolved as people have continued to study these things. And, yes. To say with absolute certainty that we know exactly what's at the core of the earth, I think is kind of foolish. I don't think we've actually been able to fully observe everything that's down there. Now, as for how it works, again, I'm not making a statement that I understand it. I'm simply saying that this is an element which is still open for discussion. Okay?
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I agree.
It's interesting, too, because, again, the tenets of religion, why do I compare science to a religion? Because the religions have changed over time, too, right? Why do we have so many sects of Christianity? Every time it seems like somebody decides they don't like one part of the book, but they like another part a little too much, we have another sect. And
You're right.
This is kind of the way it goes. And again, not necessarily saying that anybody's even interpreting the book correctly or understanding what they're reading. It's just a matter of, based on my interpretation, I believe that I have the right answers. And again, another sect, again, I use that word, is born. So,
no doubt about it. That's right. Exactly. That's how we get the different religions. The different people stand up and have a different idea, and they are able to capture so many people in their thinking, and before you know it, they become very powerful, and then they become a Vatican. They become a center for religious knowledge, until somebody else pops up, and now somebody else is gaining the spotlight. And so that, the more we change, the more we stay the same. But keep in mind that there's 24 hours a day, every day, there are thousands and thousands of electrical storms, electrical lightning hitting the earth by the thousands of strikes a day. It's been said that the astronauts can see continual lightning on the earth 24/7. Continual lightning on the earth somewhere. So my point is that if there's a powerful lightning bolts, are very, very powerful. And what are they doing when they hit the earth, when the lightning jumps from the earth to the clouds or from the clouds to the earth, whatever way it works? I'm not a scientist, but I'm assuming that these powerful electrical volts, that they're 24/7, which they are. Is never ever a time when the earth itself is without a huge electrical storm, some kind of a volcano, electricity, or hurricanes or something. Well, that much electricity being generated because the earth itself is like a dynamo. It's turning, it's twisting, and it's circulating, and it's creating friction, and that friction is creating electricity, and the electricity is grounding itself in the ground. And so I'm thinking that there may be some reason why the electricity being pumped into the earth 24/7 around the globe keeps this hot molten lava close to the surface, keeps it bubbling and keeps it hot. It's because the earth is rotating like a dynamo, like at the big dams that dynamos create the electricity. And if the earth is turning around and like a dynamo and creating electricity, it's being grounded during storms, so that we have electrical storms bring the electricity back into the earth. Where you just keep pumping that kind of electricity back into the earth, and it's going to heat up the rock. It's going to heat it up very hot. Right. So you're going to have molten lava. Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's molten lava is all the way down to the core. We don't know what's at the core.
Right. And look, there's a variety of chemical and electrical reactions that are occurring continuously on the planet. You brought up clouds there. Now, you talked about the aspect of lightning, but here's another interesting thing, right? If you travel through a cloud in an airplane, the airplane is not covered in water, is it? Why? The cloud is not filled with water. But clouds do produce water, don't they?
That's right.
You have another, again, it's a chemical reaction that if you ask most people, they tell you, well, look, there's obviously water in the cloud and it then falls to the earth,
Yeah, but why does it fall to the earth? The reason why we have rain is because of meteorites. Meteorites cause us to have rain. So if you didn't have meteors hitting the earth, you wouldn't have rain. Meteors hitting the earth causes the clouds to drop water because of the meteorites. It goes back to the idea that when a meteor hits the earth, it explodes, and when it explodes, it blows into a bomb. And when it hits the atmosphere, it blows into a bomb kind of a thing, and it's burning as it shoots across the sky. Where all the dust from that burning of meteorites, which continually hit the earth 24 hours a day, we're being struck by meteors. All over the earth, we're being struck by the meteors during the day, during the evening, during nighttime, 24 hours a day, every day. And when those big meteors come in, they blow up and they burn up in the atmosphere. We see them as they shoot across the sky. And they create a lot of burnt dust, a lot of, what do you call it? The dust from a fire. What's the word I'm looking for? The dust from a fire. My mind went blank for the word I'm looking for. But anyway, the meteors burning up leave a stream of dust up in the atmosphere. And then over the years and years and years of meteors hitting the atmosphere, burning up, the dust itself builds up and starts to fall to earth. And when it falling to the earth, the dust is falling to the earth. It hits into the clouds, and the clouds, little droplets of water form around each little speck of dust, and it gets so heavy that it falls into rain. So when it rains, it's because of the dust it's the dust in the atmosphere caused by meteorites that are causing to have rain.
Right, and the fascinating part about all this is that in reality, if you're to break down every single reaction on the planet, seemingly everything that occurs, you would have to recognize that there is an electrical, chemical, and indeed magnetic portion to each of these interlocking things that are going on.
Yes.
The rain is associated to the energy which is there. The fact that this condition exists is because of a magnetosphere that's around the planet. It's kind of a unique system that, again, is constantly being reevaluated and re-understood by science. And again, if you're just to open a science book, the most current science book, and then wait 20 years and open it again, you'll find a tremendous amount of difference. So this occurs all the time.
Yep,
That's all I'm saying about it. So, the fact that it's not in the scriptures to explain exactly what's under the Earth's surface, I'm really not surprised, because it probably would not have aged as well as the rest of the story. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you're right. And besides, who wrote the scriptures? And how do we know that they knew all these things that they talk about in the Bible that we now know did not even exist? We're told that the Jews, that the Hebrew people marched around Jericho and they played, they blew on their trumpets and circulated around Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Well, now we find out they know where Jericho is, and the archaeologists in Israel saying that Jericho never had any walls, so there was no need for walls to come tumbling down. Jericho didn't have any walls, never did. So what are you talking about? The walls come tumbling down.
Well, as with all things in the scriptures, this would be a metaphor, wouldn't it?
So yeah, of course, and that's why I think this idea of a world inside the earth, the inside earth, there is this ancient story where inside the earth is a whole universe inside the earth, and I think that that may be talking about the same thing J.R.R. Tolkien was talking about, the people who live in the earth. Are you talking about the secret societies who are behind the world religions or behind world governments? They're living inside the earth. They are another culture. Yeah, I think so. They are living with us on this earth, but they are not all part of us. They're not like us. They're far, far superior to us. And so they are giving us all of these stories, and we, like humans, like the animals, we just go along to get along, and we accept these stories as must be true, because that's what everybody believes, and that's what's being taught to us in our colleges and universities. So you go to college so that you can get a work permit. That's all you're doing, is just getting a work permit. And so when you come out of the university, you can now go get a job because you've got the imprimatur of the Caesar, that the emperor of the empire has given you his imprimatur of his name, and so now you've got a degree, which means you can now go out and get a job. So we're back to the same old story about how history is always being reinterpreted and retold to us and given to us over and over again. And nobody seems to question anything. Nobody seems to question where did the universities get their so-called knowledge. And, people go to watch movies like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and never ever think about why did Indiana Jones, when he was sent by the U.S. government to find the lost Ark of the Covenant, why did he go to Tibet first? Indiana Jones, if you remember, went to Tibet first. Because why? Because he had to find something in Tibet to show him where the lost Ark is going to be. And so when he found what he was looking for in the movie, they made it to be a crystal, some kind of a crystal he was looking for. But no, why did Spielberg have Indiana Jones go to Tibet? Because he had to go to Tibet to find out something about the lost Ark that was only in Tibet. And once you go there and you find out what you need to know, now you can go and go right to the lost Ark. And where did Indiana Jones go after he went to Tibet? Did he go to the Holy Land, to Israel? No, he didn't go to the Holy Land. He went to Egypt, and he found the lost Ark in an Egyptian tomb in Egypt, outside of Cairo, not in the Holy Land. That's Spielberg with Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones finds a lost Ark in Egypt, not the Holy Land. Why? Because everybody who studied the subject of the lost Ark knows there was no Jewish Ark at all. There was no Jewish Ark of the Covenant. It was called the Ark of the Contract, and it goes back to Egypt. It's an Egyptian story. And all you got to do is go on the web and look up where did the lost Ark of the Covenant of the Jews come from. And it will tell you it was an Egyptian story dreamt up by the Egyptian priest. It has nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with the Jewish people or the Islamic world, period. Everybody who's looked at the subject knows that the lost Ark is actually dealing with an Egyptian symbol that was found in Egypt by Indiana Jones. And who was looking for the lost Ark in Egypt was the Nazis. Right. And that's an interesting point. The Nazis were looking for the lost Ark in real life. But in the movie, Spielberg has who is leading the Nazi delegation looking for the lost Ark in the movie. It's a Frenchman, a French scientist. Why was a Frenchman leading the Nazis looking for the Jewish Ark of the Covenant? Why France? That's another interesting point. France, going back to the French Prieuré de Sion, the French Grand Orient Freemasons, who were actually behind the idea of trying to find a lost Ark, and they're leading the Nazis. I just think it's all a wonderful, wonderful, dazzling ancient stories that's been so misrepresented, so many lies and deceptions and promotions of propaganda and religions and ideas and belief systems and banks and all kinds of other monstrosities that have been fed to the people of this world, and that's why we are continually perplexed about the future. We don't know where we've come from, we don't know who we are, and we have no idea where we're going. Well, you know, I am telling you that we are in serious trouble. Well, the human family is in very serious trouble. That's very, very clear, aside from a lot of these other things which are difficult to make clear sometimes. In popular culture, you also have the Dan Brown novels, right, which became movies as well, right? The Priory of Sion plays a significant role in there, too. Now, they're talking about the Holy Grail, the Da Vinci Code, angels and demons, all that. And that is yet again another introduction into that world being presented to you by your friends in Hollywood. But I have one more question here that apparently you provoked when you were talking about universities. Now, this is a little bit off topic, but I have I don't know. I'm just going to ask this. I've never heard you speak about this before, but I think it's an interesting question. I have, and it reads as follows. I have always wanted to ask Jordan Maxwell about his view on the word doctor, because people who have a PhD are referred to as doctors. There is the word doctrine. There is the word documentary. There is the physician doctor. There is documentation. This seems to be a significant word, and since Jordan has an affinity for linguistics of this sort, what does he think of the word doctor and the prefix doc? And there's a lot of things to a doc, isn't there? There is. I mean, go ahead. When you go to court where you sit at, if you're a witness in a courtroom, you go up and you're called, and you go up and sit in the witness chair. Is called in the dock. You're in dry dock because you're in maritime admiralty law. When you're in a courtroom, you walk into the courtroom and there's a fence and a gate. And when you're called as a witness, you get up and you walk past the gate. You put your hand on the top of the gate. It's a piece of wood on the top of the gate, and it's called a bar, and therefore you're not licensed to pass the bar. But you do anyway. You pass the bar, but you're not licensed to pass the bar, and therefore you go sit. And once you open up the gate, and when your name is called, you're opening up the gate, which is called a floodgate. Now you're in hot water, and somebody's going to have to bail you out. And so therefore, when you go and sit in the witness chair, it's called the dock. You're in what is called a dry dock. You are in maritime admiralty jurisdiction, which is a jurisdiction of money. You're in the you can't do any of this unless you're on the docket anyway. That's right. You got to be on the docket, to be in the dock. And when you're called, you walk past the gate. And the reason why there's a gate and a fence is to divide the people outside on the as spectators in the courtroom. They're out on the other side of this fence, and the fence is separating the law of the land from the law of water, and so that fence represents a wooden dock. It opens up. In other words, when you open up the gate in a courtroom, it's called a water gate. You're opening yourself up. You have actually put your hand on the gate, which is a piece of wood across the gate. You put your hand on that, and it's called a bar, B-A-R, which it looks like it comes from the word British Accreditation Agency, B-A-R, bar. And so you're not licensed to cross the bar or to walk past the bar. So you go and sit down in the chair, which you are now in a dry dock. And if you're late for work, they're going to dock you. So the very word dock has a lot of connections. And that's easy to do. Just go on the web to Etymology Dictionary, look up the word, and see where it comes from. And that's what I do all the time. There's a couple of very big etymology dictionaries out there on the web. Just go there and type in the word and see where it all comes from.
Well, I've lost several hours at etymology.com. I got to be honest with you, because it is endless. It is endless. When you take a look at the actual roots and original meanings of many words, to take a look at, here's a common phrase. Just I know this sounds very random, but I'm going to tell you the truth here. If you're a nice person, take a look at go look up the word nice.
Yeah.
Because
I know.
It's not very nice. The word nice, if you will. I know that sounds funny, but seriously, look it up. It basically means you're a fool. If you're nice. So, the use of these words is very interesting. The original purposes for said words, or what they actually meant, their root meaning, when they were first put into use, and why, is extremely interesting.
Another one is, why do you go to court? Look it up. A court. You play basketball on a court. Mm-hmm. You play tennis on a court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. The whole idea is a court is a racket. The entire thing is a ball game. The whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. So you got a team of lawyers. Your team stands up and throws the ball across the court in front of the judge, and then the other team stands up and they catch the ball. Now the whole idea is to put the ball back in your court. So they throw the ball back over to your side for you to answer. Then you take that and you throw it back over to them for them to cross-examine. And so it's back and forth. You're throwing a ball. It's a game. And this is why it's called, you have to go to court to play the game. And the judge is a referee. He wears a black robe. Black robes were a symbol of the planet Saturn. So judges represent the planet Saturn. Saturn is the symbol of the old ancient Saturnian god. The god of the Jews today is Saturn. And so that's why you have so many Jews, which are lawyers and judges. Why? Because their god is the planet Saturn. Saturn was the god of the black robe. That's why you got judges who wear black robes and rabbis who wear black robes. And Vatican Catholic priests wear black robes. And you wear a black robe. If you're graduated from university or college, you wear a black robe. Why? Because you're wearing a black square. You're wearing a square mortarboard on your head, and you're wearing a black robe, the same black robe that a judge wears in court. All of this is very interesting stuff when you get into the symbolism. One of the astronomical symbols for the planet Saturn is a black square. This is why the black square is used all over the world as a symbol for the god, the presence of the god Saturn. And this is why in Islam you'll have the Mecca, the black square of Mecca in Saudi Arabia represents the god of the black robe, the black square. All of this has to do with the worship of the planet Saturn. Happily, most of the Islamic world does not know about the influence of Saturn in their religious beliefs. And a lot of the Jews do not understand the connection between Saturn and their god. It's a very interesting story of the history of religions in the world and how they have molded our world today, how they have given us the world we live in today with the words and the terms and the symbols and where it all came from. And the bottom line is we've all been misled. We all have accepted something that we don't understand. We just go along with it because everybody else goes along with it. So don't make any waves. We don't want to rock the boat. Everything is a ship, and it all goes back to the word ship, S-H-I-P. We have ownership and scholarship and dealership and friendship and, and all the word is ship.
Relationship, worship, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and here's the thing. I didn't even mention linguistics before when I was talking about JordanMaxwellShow.com, which is your website, but there you go. The language in and of itself is a study over there. And if you're into the Research Society, you will see there's a subsection on language in and of itself. The root words, the original words, the ancient words for, the words in other languages, how they seem to be transposed from one place to another. The fact that English is a designer language, as we've discussed on this show many times. And this is why it does take a bit of time to sift through it all. Now, this is focused on religion. Religion is another subsection in the Research Society area of the website, which you have to join and be a member of in order to go into. There's a lot of stuff that's there publicly at your website, though, also, which you can go take a look at, read some things, maybe even listen to a couple of radio shows. I don't know if my show's up there, but I know there's others. And you can also make a donation. There is the ability to purchase videos on demand so that you can possess them for yourself, and you can go through many long lectures. There's two really good ones up there right now, right?
Yes, yeah. The two my newest videos are there for downloading. You can watch them right now. I guess they call it streaming videos.
Yeah, you can stream them, but whenever you want. Once you paid your admission, you can stream them directly. I'm not sure about downloading or whatever, but they're available right there. Again, for cheaper than you would pay for a DVD to be mailed to your house. There's the video. But in addition, you could email Jordan, you could make a donation, all of these things help Jordan keep going. A bit of feedback is always nice, certainly. But as we've discussed on this show, you know what? Telling the truth and revealing certain things doesn't pay well. So literally contributing to Jordan's well-being is what you do when you make a donation at JordanMaxwellShow.com. Much like you do over here at Ocelli.com. Same thing. You're contributing to my well-being to allow me to keep doing my work. You're allowing me to live. You're doing the same thing for Jordan when you do that over there. And the amount of contributions that he's made for free for all these years, literally influencing people like myself, but also other smarter people than me. Okay, quite honestly, some other people that have more skills other than to just yap on a microphone, and a bit of intellect. Jordan has been extremely influential for a very long time. More than half a century's worth of studies have gone into these things, not just discussing religion, but also government, the formation of the way societies have actually emerged, the discussion of language, the discussion of the monetary system, the discussion of the interconnective worlds of all these things. And again, the Research Society is continuing to evolve. The website will likely continue to evolve, and it is all together there. You start at Jordan Maxwell Show, all one word together, JordanMaxwellShow.com, which is the only website that is actually Jordan Maxwell's. That's where you need to go if you want to purchase something, if you want to join the Research Society, make a donation. That's how you reach directly to Jordan Maxwell himself at jordanmaxwellshow.com. So, Jordan, we're at the end of our time here, but I'd like to give you a couple of minutes to say whatever you like about this series, tonight's show, whatever you want. The floor is yours for a few minutes here. I can probably give you about 5 if you want, but it's all yours however long you want to take, my friend. Again, I want to thank you for joining us, for doing this continuously. You know, when you do something repeatedly, it is a religious thing you do. So religiously, yeah, right. Jordan has come on the show. If you tie your shoes every day, you religiously tie your shoes. But anyway, another discussion for another day. This special series on religion has been entirely designed by you, whatever it is, whichever direction you wanted to go in. I'm here for as long as I can possibly be here, and as long as you want to sufficiently go through this topic. We've obviously added questions in, but generally speaking, this series will continue until Jordan feels as though it's done. That's all there is to it. But Jordan, I turn it over to you for the last, well, let's call it 4 minutes now.
Well, all I would say in conclusion is that I'm not atheistic. I do believe in the presence of a spirit that people have called for thousands of years. Wise men have called the spirit. I do believe in the presence of a divine spirit that people have called God. I don't have any problem with the idea that there's a higher form of intelligence in the universe than what we are. I believe that there are other life forms in the universe, and they have come here. They have. And I have had too many experiences to tell me that the world is not what we think it is. And I'm just trying to awaken my fellow man to the fact that the world is not what you think it is. Nothing works the way you think it does. The words don't mean what you think they mean. And that you need to go back and do some homework and find out where we have come from, where we humans have come from, where we are now, and where we're going. So we've got serious problems on this earth, and it's because of one big problem the whole earth has, and that's ignorance. Ill-informed, unread ignorance is the biggest problem the human family faces today. I don't care what all the different problems, drug addiction, alcohol, it goes back to ignorance. We are ill-informed and unread. We don't know where we've come from. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what the words mean, and there are people who have put this world together to trick you and deceive you into believing that you have to do certain things. You have to believe this. You have to do that. You've got to do this. When in point of fact, you don't have to do anything. You give up your freedom, and you give up your life, and you give up your opportunities to be free by agreeing to go along to get along. My idea is that I don't want to go along to get along with anybody. I want to know for sure. I don't want to go to a church and have them ask me, are you a believer? I don't believe anything. I want to know. I want to do the research and find out where things have come from. That's what I'm hoping to do, is to wake up my fellow man to the idea that we need to wake up and start reading and studying and turning the whole world around. We've had enough of this lies and deception and laying out foundations upon which we build our life only to find out we were wrong from day one. Religion is not what you think it is. Government does not do what you think they do. Banks are not here to do what you think they do. The police are not here to do what you think they do. Nothing works the way you think it does. And I'm just trying to wake you up to what I have discovered over the years, because I've always I have been on the side of investigating where things have come from. The etymology of not only words but ideas. Where did we get the world that we live in? Where did it come from? So that's what I'm hoping to do by making my website available, jordanmaxwellshow.com. If you'll join my research society, you will see all kinds of stuff you've never seen before. Some of it is very, very controversial, but it's based on actual facts. So go back to my website and join my research website if you wish. And also contact me and let me know that you care about the program and you care about what I'm doing. I would love to hear from my people who are listening and what they think, what your feelings are, what you're thinking about what I do. I'm very interested to hear from the people that I'm talking to. So do go on my website and hit contact and then send me an email. And thank you again, Chuck, for allowing me to be on the show.
Well, you know, again, it's my privilege. It's my pleasure to have you here, and we will continue this next week. Next week, you are available, right?
I think so.
Well, barring illness or some unforeseen thing, we'll continue this next Monday. And again, like I said, we will continue it until Jordan feels as though he's done. Go over to JordanMaxwellShow.com in between now and then. And you know what? Like he said, send him some feedback. Send him a donation. Join the research website. Check out the videos. Check out the stuff that's just there for free. Do all of that. But above all else, continue to educate yourself so that you are not walking around. And you know what they say, ignorance, it may indeed be bliss. I'm not sure, but here's the problem. I can't remain in ignorance and find bliss. I don't know why that is. I mean, well, maybe that's because I never started in ignorance. I mean, maybe if you're born into it and you remain in it, maybe it is bliss, but Jordan doesn't know anything about that. And neither do I, because you got to keep asking questions, you got to keep exploring, and you got to keep educating yourself, because although it sounds extremely trite and passé to say it, knowledge is actually power. And it's the only way that we are going to empower ourselves is to reclaim, regain, and ultimately collect that knowledge for ourselves. No one's going to do it for you, but Jordan Maxwell, again, has been here to give you a place to start and to give you a place to explore. So I appreciate that. Jordan, thanks again.
Thank you very much.